Well, apparently, millions of people here watching these animated characters, and they talk and they laugh and they play video games or other kind of games, and somehow it feels personal. So VTubers don't just entertain; they create a sense of connection that uh, is predictable, safe, and emotionally engaging. Like people tend to like it. For many viewers, especially neurodivergent individuals, uh, this form of connection is, let's say, feel easier than real world. I guess because screen helps. So, but when the comfort turns into reliance, an important question emerge about how this relation shape of our emotional lives, our sense of belonging, and the boundaries between creator and audience show up. So, what are we talking today?
So we're talking about VTubers and the mental health and psychology around VTuber culture, I'd say. It is somewhat similar to the furries episode. You know, we will touch some of the context that we talked about when we talked about furries and fandom and friendship. But this is its
Hmm.
own sort of culture, and its own sort of dynamics with its own history and its own sort of way of getting to where we are today. So with that, let's confront your troubles.
And make conscious the unconscious.
Hi, this is Josh.
And this is Santi. Welcome to this session in the Mind Quest.
So we wanted to talk about VTubers. Um, in many ways, I propose this topic because I don't think the guild would exist today as it is if not for VTuber. I think we have talked about these ideas of how sort of psychology and philosophy and mental health is constantly rediscovering things that at some point it had already discovered. I think in many ways, um, VTubing like brings forth this question that Freud was trying to answer. And Freud's question was, is wild psychology, is wild psychoanalysis okay? So the question he was trying to answer was, do you need to be a doctor to be an analyst, psychoanalyst? And there were a lot of sort of arguments in both sides, right? Freud's argument, I mean, Freud himself has arguments in both sides. On one hand, you had the idea that we're all human, and there is some level of similarity that we all have. There is some level of understanding that we all have, and that if we learn about ourselves, in many ways, the techniques or the ideas or the learning about learning that we get can be shared with other people, right? And can be sort of adapted by other people. I sort of rely on other people as well. On the other side, obviously, you have the medical argument. I would say there's a danger to do this wild practice of psychology, right? At the end of the day, the same tools that here at the guild, for example, help us understand people can be used to gaslight people. They can be used to manipulate people, right? Like here at the guild, like pretty much every episode, every day of the training, we went over this idea of we don't impose or believe what we want on the person. And it is hard to do it. It takes practice to, we talk about being aware of your biases and all that. The other argument is, well, without all of that preparation, that is really a lot about how to use the knowledge, you could cause a lot of harm. But there is this question, right, in first time, and I think VTuber, and among other things, but VTuber, for example, we are taking today, in many ways bring forth that question in terms of, is it okay for a content creator, in this case a VTuber, for example, to explicitly sort of take agency in the well-being of their community, for example. What happens when they suggest, I don't know, like the typical, right? Like, take care of yourself, live well, do exercise, right? Where is that line where, yeah, okay, these are general recommendations that anyone can make. Where does this become mental health? Where does this become, more complex than that? Whether it is positive or negative, where does it become more complex than that? For me, well, this is kind of the idea here of how psychology connects to VTubing, and I think it's a very practical, pragmatic way where you have weird people who like watching weird people, and in many ways, that's kind of where it all begins. So yeah.
Well, for this session, I was completely lost because I really don't know much about it. I was trying to find out the information and actually see some stuff, and I get to this artistic realization that it is somehow a low profile and low resources stand up uh, puppetry show, sort of. Yeah. So I wasn't really connecting with it because I don't know, maybe it's something that is generational. I don't know. It doesn't really hit with me, but it reminds me a lot of my ex students. So I think it will be important during this session, at least, that we establish uh, like the common grounds. Trying to understand what questions could lead us to understand this whole phenomenon that is nowadays stuff, and how actually these contemporary idols sort of came to be.
Mhm. Yeah, so I think you actually sort of got the key concepts that around VTubing. You said idol, that's where it comes from. You said this idea of puppet show. Absolutely, this is. I have heard several VTubers sort of describe it like that. Like, you are piloting essentially a puppet. Um, so, long story short, it very much comes from Japan, obviously. And it very much comes from idol culture. So these two things that you very much identified go kind of, I would say for a very long time, were like an inseparable part of VTubing. I don't know if nowadays all VTubers would say that being an idol is part of being a VTuber. What happened was the pandemic, and I think that also was the thing you're picking up. When the pandemic happened, for a lot of students that were at the time like at home or without anything to do, lockdown, VTubing became sort of a hobby, and that's where VTubing in the West appears. So you have it, like I said, in Japan at first, sort of like part of the idol industry. When COVID happens, it starts becoming popular in the West. When these people that are locked down at home without anything else to do, who happen to be fans of Japanese culture, I don't want to say we for attacks, but like I mean, if you watch a lot of Naruto, like you're gonna go about that. But they happen to be fans of anime culture, and they sort of start bringing it to the West. A lot of these things, including the game, sort of are heritage from that historical development. So a lot of them, for example, already stream on Twitch, but the name VTuber stands for virtual YouTuber, because originally they were on YouTube. So notice how even with these 2025 very modern concepts, we see the same dynamics of language sort of moving independently with the people, separately from like what would be common sense. If you're going to YouTube, whether you are a VTuber, well, that's just the name of this sort of art. Another way I have heard this described is a sort of radio show where the radio host just happens to be or happens to have these anime avatar essentially. I think at some point it was also very connected to gaming, and I would say it still definitely is connected. But I think if you look at Twitch, for example, nowadays, and you organize it by categories, I think if not the number one, pretty sure the number one category is just chatting, which is literally just chatting. No video games required. So I think that's where the other sort of way of presenting it comes up as really a radio show where you have a host that is piloting this digital puppet that is pretty much just sharing like this space of their lives with their audience. Like again, very much like a radio host that is on the air every day at 7 p.m. You have VTubers who are there every day at 7 p.m. Sometimes they're video games, sometimes I would say a lot of the times it's more about just talking, literally just chatting. That's the stream category as well. So I think this is where we start. So this would be like a general overview of what a VTuber is. So a VTuber is an entertainer that entertains through a virtual avatar. That's essentially a puppet that is piloted by the VTuber through motion capture. So they have a camera that is recording their facial expressions, and the model is answering or changing based on those facial expressions. You have some people who go full out, and they would have like a whole 3D model and a whole 3D tracking. So they would have a number of stations, or well, they have technology to do it, but a number of trackers that would then let them translate their whole movement into this virtual avatar. And these, now you have these, like I said, this visual puppet that now moves the same way a regular person moves. Nowadays, we have gotten to the point where you can have a slapstick show with like a virtual avatar completely. You can bring items from the real world into the digital world. You can use a motion tracking suit and all your movements get exactly translated. So there's a lot of variety in what they are, but this is, I'd say, the general ideas. And I would say usually different VTubers for different shows will have a theme. So you have horror VTubers, you have Nintendo VTubers, you have video game VTubers, you have mostly variety VTubers, chatty VTubers as well. So you have all the different types of VTubers. Yeah, I would say that's kind of the overview of where we are in 2025. Very, very, very quick overview of what VTubers.
So, for all these nowadays context and the stuff that is about to come, I'm pretty sure that some words that were referred on that session about furry in the furry community are going to come up again. That is, those are the PSR, parasocial relationship, right? Because I think that's the scenario. Uh, and surely there are pros and cons on this situation. So let's try to unfold the scenario. And well, at the end, we'll get to some general recommendations on how to get along with this kind of relationship that either you, me, or whoever is watching is gonna have with this kind of entertainer, if that's a correct word for it, and how to be a good audience, maybe, or how to keep yourself well wired during the process of having that kind of relationship, right? Because I think
Right.
it's kind of easy to get across the borders. Well, we'll see.
Right. Right. Yeah, I think something that we said at the beginning is that there seems to be an overrepresentation of people with mental health needs or who are neurodivergent among, let's say, the VTuber community. Like I don't want to assume for VTubers, but for the VTuber community at least. So I think that while parasocial relationships can be problematic in any context, I think in the context of VTuber, because of the closeness within the speaker or the audience, right? And compare this with like a radio show, right? There's only so much you can talk to a radio host, right? Like there's only so much you can call in to a radio show, right? There's only so many emails you can send a radio host. But the open nature of a chat, for example, the open nature of what they are talking, they will be constantly reading chat and reading things out loud. This generates an additional level of sort of connection that by itself isn't necessary. Right? We go back to what we talked about when we were talking about fooders, and we go back to this idea of being a fooder by itself isn't negative or positive. The key seems to be in the relationship with that thing you like, with the relationship with that community of that thing you like. And it seems that it kind of goes the same way here for VTubers, right? In many ways, VTubing itself seems to be pretty neutral, but the individual effect, let's say, or the individual reaction that every person will have to a YouTuber, or to being part of a community, or to having these more relaxed boundaries, that will be different from person to person. And this is where we go back to this idea of fandom versus fanship, right? This idea of fandom as being part of a community, as me following this VTuber, me having an Oshi becomes a way for me to grow, a way for me to meet new people, a way for me to put my art out there, a way for me to, have somebody to talk to if I feel down. That's fandom, right? And then on the other hand, you have the sort of isolating side of it, where I start thinking that, oh my gosh, like this VTuber is like everything in my life. Like without this VTuber, I'm going to die, and I need to buy their merch, I need to buy their Nakimura. Like I need to give them more money, more money. Like one day they will look at me and smile, and it becomes this more obsessive, this more it's still something you like, it's still something you're a fan of, but it becomes this consumption rather than this being part of something, that be something that you share. It becomes something that I consume, that I try to make mine, that I accumulate, right? And that's fanship, right? This individual isolating participation in being fan of something, right? So I think this very much comes into play here as well, of fanship and fandom as being part of a YouTuber audience, right? Sorry, I don't know if that kind of goes with the idea as well. Um, in many ways, if you are a fan of an anime, right? There is a limit to how much interaction you can have, right? Like Goku is never going to say your name and say thanks to you, but Obituary will. Like you can subscribe and send a message. You can use text to speech to play something on the stream, right? Like there are these additional layers of interactivity that, while on one hand they can help ease feelings of loneliness, they can help ease feelings of isolation, on the other hand they can also promote feelings of isolation, they can promote feelings of loneliness, they can increase risky behavior where you're spending money that you don't have, right? So there is the sort of increased potential, but it is potential for both being more positive, but also for being more negative. And this is sort of kind of the idea as well for so maybe with that we can further moving into what we come to head today and talk about the topic for today more closely.
So, mm, I will say that when you introduced me to this topic, I really got no idea what a VTuber is. I've heard stuff about people using this like avatars working around instead of them showing up, and it reminded me a lot of this educational theory based on puppetry that is also applied in psychology. Sometimes when you get a kind of patient that is not willing to talk directly to another human, but somehow the puppet is like a medium that works or helps with the flow of the work actually come out. So
Mm,
I think we already covered somehow the what about a VTuber. So I do understand that it's a person that's behind this sort of masked virtual persona and trying to interact with their people. And I think most of the time it must be some sort of kind of original character, but at the same time I get the feeling that it could be a recycled character from another place that they are using somehow to, I don't know, connect with a specific public. You used the example of Goku, not answering directly to you, but I can imagine actually someone using that character as part of a VTubing program. So,
mm,
and it will happen with any other character, and it will keep inside the context or the concept we're trying to. We get through the whys And you said it had something to do with the pandemics and a lot of people having nothing else to do. So somehow it become entertainment for everyone, and they get passionate about it, and somehow it stayed. Uh, and we got the wins because, well, pandemic issues, but I understand it got an east history behind it because Japanese culture tends to create a lot of stuff that end up in our lands. Not only because the culture is interesting, but because there are a lot of fans of Japanese culture around, and especially thanks to anime and manga, it has overcome and conquered a lot of hearts. Also, it's cheaper to access than comics for most Latin Americans, so there you have it. But
Mhm.
the thing I like to go through is so there's also this situation that's been coming up because it's I don't know, you can cash on it somehow, and it's working because if it wouldn't be, there will be a lot of people that have quitted it already. But uh, I've got this view of enterprises that are actually getting into it and generating artificial VTubers. They are actually AI generated somehow, and they're being working around from time to time, and you actually see the character interact with a lot of people at the same time, obviously in a superhuman way somehow, and they're having a lot of advances even with the avatar. So now I was today maybe I was seeing a guy that was that has actually created a way to have a what was it? It was the clothes texture to actually move according to what the character was doing, so it got a more realistic feeling of what's happening. And it reminds me of something that theater actors were saying not so while ago, that if they continue through this path, they'll end up discovering theater again.
Mhm, mhm,
You
mhm.
see, so uh, we went to the what I like to know how how exactly do one turn into a VTuber?
Mhm. Well, okay, so wait, so let's go little by little. Let's talk about the AI and artificial intelligence first, because I think it's very interesting. So again, I think that VTubing from the beginning was connected to the technology side of it, right? Like the technology to translate your facial movements into the movements of a virtual avatar. That took a lot of time and a lot of effort to develop. So from the beginning, there was that connection. And I think in many ways, up to the present, I'd say, there is still that hand in hand sort of growth where especially like some VTubers are particularly constantly trying to push forward for what they can do in this virtual world, right? So from going from having a 2D avatar that sort of moves a little bit to, like I said before, having these full-fledged 3D spaces. More recently, I've seen these like large-scale events where you have like these stadiums, sized arenas where you have people, different interviews, and so on. Just a few days ago, I watched this beach soccer match, where there was this group of anime girls playing soccer in using their 3D avatars, where I assume they were all wearing 3D tracking suits. And then you have the AI side of it. So one of the most famous sort of projects in the front tech side of it is called Neurosama. Neuro, I think neuron from neural network, right? I would argue that controversial. This is one of the like few legitimate uses of AI as a tool I have seen. I think that's kind of crazy to say because the star of the show is the AI. But I think the reason she is the star is because she is seen as a tool. So rather than trying to force current LLMs or current machine learning technology to do, like what fucking Microsoft wants you to do, that is aspire your computer, it kind of goes the other way around and looks at the way AI is right now and says, okay, how do we make this entertaining? So I'm thinking specifically about Neural, like I said, Beetle, that's the programmer, the AI developer that sort of works on this AI. What he did is make it a child. So it is really interesting how if you frame the AI's incompetence as being the competence of a child, suddenly it becomes a lot more endearing. And suddenly you have this character that fits very well and acts very well inside their character naturally. Like, because the limits of the machine becomes part of the narrative. The machine doesn't understand complex concepts the same way a kid would. So things that would be like in any other context would be like, oh, this stupid AI is not understanding my instruction, becomes, oh, this kid misinterpreted what I said because they are a kid. And recently they had the really interesting show where they had 3 humans who they are, well, pretty relatively good Minecraft players, and their challenge was, let's complete Minecraft with the AI. Gira. And the challenge is Gira has to be there when we do all the big things. So when we go together, when we hit the dragon, Gira has to be there. And it's interesting how she occupies this middle point between, yeah, it is a machine. I mean, in that way, it adds this element of randomness of that any machine could add. But at the same time, the framing of this machine and this randomness as a narrative character, of this child that one of them is now having to act like a babysitter, where the incompetence of an AI becomes part of the narrative. I think that is where the real work and the real talent of AI VTubers lies. In setting up this show and having sort of the creativity, the foresight, the intuition to say, yes, like AI is not the protagonist. AI is part of the story. And AI is not this omniscient power machine that, just based on what you think it is. It is something with limitations. And how do we turn these limitations into something fun, into something that's enjoyable for the people to watch? And I think that's really, in many ways, the whole challenge of VTubing and what VTubing is about. About having the limitation of, you cannot see my body, you can only see my voice, you can only see so much of my expressions, and still I'm trying to put in an entertaining show. Right, so that's why it interferes a lot with singing, with karaoke, with comedy, with like game shows, with like playing video games. Because in many ways, limitation breeds creativity, and I think that is very much true in the VTubing space. Sorry, I think that's one of the reasons why they are also different in a way. Because for some people it's about staying in character. For others, it doesn't matter the character. It's just like avatar I'm using so you don't see me, but I still get to be with you. So there is a lot of variety, like I said. For some people, it's about being kawaii and ooh. For others, it is, like I said, there are horror VTubers for whom, it's about talking about the CIA files or saying Umamusu might think of it. But like, in many ways, it's like a medium rather than the result. So VTubing is a medium by which you create something new. So, like I said, one example in the AI field is, for example, Beetle and Euro, where the show is the development, right? Like everybody knows this is an AI, and kind of what's interesting is seeing how Beetle manages to get it to act in interesting ways. How Beetle gets it to act as effectively as like a big thing as a child, for example. That's kind of the one measure for cute and stuff. Uh, but again, there are these additional layers to it than what is initially seen, right? I think of this in terms of like soccer, right? Like, yes, everybody can understand the soccer. Like, yeah, they're just kicking the ball to put it in the net. But if you watch more games of soccer, you kind of begin to understand, oh, okay, so there is some like tactics they are doing. Oh, okay, so the guy that's on the right, that's why it doesn't move away from the right. Oh, interesting. So VTubing is kind of like that. I think every VTuber in a way have their own stuff to discover because they all kind of do their own thing with the common medium of this virtual avatar, usually with like anime aesthetics, and some online conventions thrown in as well. And I'm going to use this kind of color.
Wow. So there is. I don't think there will be like uh, challenging situation between traditional YouTubers and VTubers nowadays because I'm getting this vibe that they are like two sides of the same coin.
I would say yes, but I mean, a lot of things are two sides of the same coin, and they still hate each other. I would say yes. I think logic would dictate that these are two sides of the same coin. I think unfortunately there is still a lot of bad blood, let's say, in between VTubers and FlashTubers or regular online entertainers. I think there is unfortunately a lot of division still. Even if I agree
Yeah,
100% they are the same thing.
it's like kind of using the barrier in a different way, like shape it in a different manner, right? Because the barrier is always the screen, but you choose either to facade as yourself or maybe mask yourself and be other one, right? It's the role playing stuff. So I can get why so many people will get into this idea of, yeah, I got a chat chance with this person. And also, we're into this situation that we're mostly on live shows when talking to VTubers, different than YouTubers that most of the time they got pre-recorded, documentaries or programs. Even when they are on
Mhm.
podcasting, somehow they are pre-recorded. What you end up seeing is not the live show, but the recorded version of it. So most of us like what happened with us from time to time.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
um, I mean, I think there's a thing here that could be like crucial for all the process, and I'm asking myself like how it will interact differently with different kind of publics because I don't know, at least for me or people like my generation, it's more common to try to focus on the real things, and maybe you'll get more confident or I don't know, trust more something that looks like a real human being, even behind the screen. So you'll prefer a YouTuber maybe than a virtual character because nowadays you are all uh, losing your own trust in everything that is animated because you will start thinking from the beginning that maybe it's AI. Especially because the few programs I managed to see, sorry, I feel a little dumb watching them. So I said, okay, could be AI, because the answers it's giving, it's like, and also I get around this idea, okay, I can think as a teacher, what happens when my students are looking at these things on a daily basis? Ain't this gonna affect them in that way that will end up rotting them somehow? Like lowering their own capacities in how to think about things because they're just following stuff brainlessly. Uh, what exactly is going on with this phenomenon? Because I think it's quite a heavy thing that is coming up, and we're not actually, as responsible adults, I mean, reacting on
Mhm.
time, especially if you're a parent. on this kind of situation, because I know there are good things. Okay, maybe you get entertained and you may connect with a community that is near this situation. But as you say, there are two sides on this all the time. And as you're watching animated characters, you may be thinking that they are harmless because that happened many, many times before. And if anime had showed us something during the 80s, is there is no such thing as animated characters that could not be violent, pornographic, or whatever else you want to think about them. So, what would we think we should be doing around this situation? And I don't mean, is it necessary to have a lot of control about it, or I don't know, get involved, try to understand, and maybe that's exactly what's going to happen during this episode, right? You're trying to give tools to understand, maybe, and take your own decisions at the end.
So what was the question there? Sorry.
But what are we supposed to do? You think it's okay? I mean, we should just like let it pass and put not too much attention to it, because there's a slight chance that if we put a lot of attention to it, we'll end up calling more people to it.
I mean, I think this is kind of the same thing we spoke about when we were talking about like advertate and like talking about humility, right? In the sense that the problem is not anything can be problematic, right? Like anything you can take to the extreme and make it harmful. It is but for that to happen, the conditions of you as a person have to be I mean, right in a bad way. I mean, right? Like right so that things go wrong. In the sense that, like we were saying earlier, right? Like these additional layers sort of separation, like the screen, obviously the virtual avatar, and so on and so forth. Because they add this separation between what you are seeing and who you are, they can feel safer for people who are more sensitive to stuff, right? Like you mentioned, what if I want to connect to a human? I would say, what if you don't? What if you don't want to talk to somebody? What if you don't want to feel judged by another person? What if you don't want to, you are ready to have a customer service job, you don't want to talk to another human also the 3 hours before you go to bed, right? So I would say there is this sort of separation there, and because it introduces this distance, this may be one of the reasons that there are, or rather than mental illness, let's say, or that neurodivergence, or that other mental health situations may be overrepresented in a community like this, because it is easier to interact with when there are more layers of separation between you and whatever it is you're interacting with. There is this level of identification as well. Well, maybe I always thought that I wasn't capable of, I don't know, speaking in public. I always thought I wasn't capable of making friends or having a group follow me and whatever. But here it is, this person that has figured out a way to establish a community, to make friends, to become known by other people. Turns out it doesn't matter how I look, for example, right? Another element of sort of connection there, possible connection there with VTubing, right? There are these elements of disability, right? Like what happens if again you're at home, you I don't know, you don't have a leg, you have very severe psoriasis, and if you get there, you burst out in hives. I don't know, you have colitis and you spend weeks in bed, like whatever. Right? Well, if there are all of these conditions that on one hand may seem like incapacitating, well, here it is, this person, this VTuber who has these things and is a successful online personality, right? So this is kind of the idea here, on the positive side of things, right? But if you take that to the extreme, right? If you take that to, oh, my happiness now depends on this VTuber being here every afternoon at 3. now you become dependent on something. That iteration is going to be there at 3 forever. Right? So you know for sure this is going to go away eventually. So this is a problem, right? Maybe not a problem now, but it will be a problem when this VTuber goes, right? If now the only way I can hang out with my friends is when we are watching this VTuber. But I actually don't like this VTuber that much. I don't like their opinion. They are kind of hateful. But if I leave, I lose my friend. Now I'm trapped. Right? So this is where this becomes problematic. Where and we think about a lot of things, right? When something begins to dominate the rest of your life, when something else becomes the condition for you to be happy, that's when things become problematic. And everything can be problematic. It can happen with TV, with video games, with food, with like sex, right? Like it is the moment where your well-being depends on something that something becomes problematic or can become problematic. But VTubers specifically are any more or less problematic than, like I said, like television or sugar or like anything else. The problem is not in the thing; it's in the conditions that lead to that curve. So the fact that we live in 2025 in capitalist healthcare, that leads to dependency, and dependency can be on anything. Sometimes it will be on VTuber, sometimes it will be on math. Yeah. So that's kind of the idea there. It really is about the dose. It can be a medicine or it can be a poison. This is kind of the same idea, right? Like anything taken to the extreme, it can be toxic.
So, well, I think we'll get worried about the entertainers in another situation. But I wonder, and I want to say this too, because I wonder what happens to a person that is actually a normal human being, and all of a sudden, because you are playing this virtual character, you turn into a person that has earned some fame and now is fully occupied in trying to entertain a lot of people that don't actually know him. Yeah, because they know the virtual character but not the person, and he's starting to get this I know, stressed out about pressure on it to keep up with new stuff, as to I don't know, doing new shows, trying to be original each and every time, and actually push forward the limitations of the technology too, because I, I'm quite sure there are a lot of expressions that no matter how good the animator is, won't actually get them as well. I know there are animation techniques that are helpful to exaggerate some expressions, but you can't actually show uh, what in a terrible script will be sadness of the soul. You can feel it and you can like sense it visible in another person, but not necessarily get that in an animation and a picture, right? Because it requires a specific mood on, I don't know, how the eyes, how the mouth. It's a complex emotion to show out. So what do you think happens actually with VTubers? Them as human beings being always in this situation that they are switching between reality and virtuality to be this fake persona or this interpretation that ends up turning more real than their real lives.
I mean, I say anything you see on the screen is fake. Well, I would have a hard time thinking that somebody who gets on a screen can genuinely say, yeah, that is 100% me. Like, if you look at my YouTube channel, you will know me. I cannot think of somebody that would be able to say that. I would say that the act itself of just setting the camera, deciding what clothes I'm going to wear, or deciding what's on the background, that is me projecting an image of what I want to project. That is not me. Like that is it is an image that you're seeing on camera. Kind of the same thing we say when we're talking about mental health, that this idea that the only person that's with you 24/7 is you. Nobody is going to really know you better than yourself. This is kind of the same logic here. Like I would argue that if anything, VTuber is more obvious. Because it's obvious you are seeing a projection, a construction of somebody else. I would say it's more deceiving to see a person and think that because you are now seeing them, you know them better. Because, I mean, what's the difference between you being able to see my face and not being able to see my face if I am saying exactly the same thing? You still don't know me. You still don't know me beyond the hour of recording that you are seeing, or well, maybe that we have 12 episodes, the 12 hours of recording that you're seeing. You still wouldn't know me beyond that. You still wouldn't know Josh. You would know the character of Josh that we put together for this show. So I would argue that is kind of how all entertainment works, right? I would say same thing. Like if you are watching a movie, a show, a TV series, right? Like you're not looking at Jack Black in the well, you are looking at. I mean, but because he was always Jack. I mean, I was thinking you're going to look at Jack Black in the Minecraft movie. You're looking at Jack Black, the character that he always portrays in all movies, but we don't know if that's actually him in his private life. We don't know if that's another good example. I think something that to me was sort of very moving was when Robin Williams died, but from suicide. Because in my head, I thought I know Robin Williams. Robin Williams is a comedian character. All his characters are so funny or whatever. But it was pretty jarring to me when I learned that he died from suicide. Because that didn't match the idea I had of him. The real idea I had of him. No, I didn't have a real idea of him. I had a fake idea that I have made myself through media. But that is not any more fake than the fakeness of YouTube or VTubers. Humans can have plastic surgery. You can have live AI erase your arrugas, like your wrinkles. I think in many ways that's kind of sort of the recommendation, rather than trying to dissolve it, to lean into it, to be aware that this is a character that I am portraying. Now, when people say, "Oh my God, I fucking hate you, you're an idiot," they are not saying, "You, Joshua Wayo, I hate you, you're an idiot." They are saying, "I hate this portrayal you have made of yourself." In my case, it would be just this, my face, in this channel. If I were a VTuber, it would be the design of my VTuber. I hate that. I hate that person that is a VTuber. That's not you. I'd say that separation is actually kind of the way to go. To lean into the difference. But no, you are not the person that your audience thinks you are. No, you are not. There's no way to show yourself fully in like a recording, because life is more than a recording. Life is more than what we do in a specific time. So in many ways, I'd say sort of if there is a recommendation there, I would say in general, it's that. Is to be aware that whether you are the audience looking at Yoshi or your favorite VTuber, or whether you're a VTuber, like looking at yourself or what you have created or the world you have built, remember that there is a separation between what you're seeing and what really is. Where that you are creating a work of art, that work of art is separate from you. It may have things of you, sure, but it's separate from you. I think that goes both ways. Same thing in the audience, right? Like, yeah, maybe the VTuber you're watching has a lot of similarities with you, with your life story, with your personality, whatever. That is a character that you are seeing on the screen. You don't know the person behind that screen. You don't know the person behind the VTuber. For a lot of VTubers, that's precisely on purpose. The whole point of being a VTuber is to maintain their anonymity. But be aware of it. Remember that the way to know something is to sit down and have a coffee, not through looking at an edited, planned recording of something. That's a work of art, and you can appreciate the work of art for what it is. The person is something else. I don't know if this kind of follows that idea of the fight,
Yeah,
the
sort of.
fight will be
And you know why I was asking this? Is because in the history of theater, in acting, there are several cases of actors losing their minds due to a specific character. Weren't able actually to separate reality for the fantasy of the character they created. It doesn't matter if it's a scripted character from a specific writer or not. You got examples of this even in cinema. You know, the first Lois Lane in Superman movies got this issue in her last years. So I was asking if they that are prepared actors, professionals, got this kind of issues, why wouldn't then Common Joe portraying himself as, I don't know, mm, Naruto, wouldn't suddenly have a similar situation in a few years? Because it's not something we will see in this specific time, but maybe in their, I don't know, middle ages, uh, middle ages is like their elder years. Yeah, all of a sudden you got this elder guy that still think he's Naruto and is running around, I don't know, with his chair or whatever he's trying to move around, and in a Naruto way. Yet, so uh, and you said it's important to try to keep a conscious mind on separating stuff. But since most of these people is not really prepared, and I'm to think they are not, because you said it started as a hobby, uh, so there is a potential risks for their own mental health too, as also maybe for their public, because if they are not able to keep the separation clear, maybe they will lose it at some point and start to communicate with their public as they if they are right. So there's where I think we get to this stuff of following and being followed. That is like the basic currency in this scenario. Either you're being followed, a lot of people that kind of validate your position, or you are in the other side, being public, following each and every one that is part of this idol culture that you're trying to keep. So at some point, I was thinking it sounds like consented harassment because you're letting a lot of people into your life somehow, because we start to think that way. Social media is like our life is there, and when we by any reason lose our accounts, we start feeling naked and lifeless, and like something really important is lost, like part of your brain, because you're somehow doing that, no? Putting memories in the machine so you don't have to remember them, and then when you see them you recall, ah yes, I used to do this. And I thought there's some kind of connection, yeah, contemporary neurodivergent audience in this. Uh, I don't really understand why. I do get this, that okay, maybe because it's difficult to communicate, or you feel more comfortable. And what we talked about the puppet before, it might make some sense. But real life happens in the outer world, right? Outside the screen and outside the machine. So uh, as you say, the pros and cons. Okay, they are having this space to communicate and be with others that they might feel similar to them, but at the same time they are being separated from reality. So pros and cons at the same time. Uh, I don't think it's something that's gonna turn into a serious matter with time. I mean, just because some of my students used to have this situation, right? Because there wasn't able actually to communicate with the rest of their partners, not in a natural way, but it was always feeling forced, and you will see them struggling with communication, because every time they talk they end up either molesting or be attacking somebody with their words, not intentionally, but because they didn't know how to use them well. You start to get this idea also that these kids are like somehow educated by a machine.
Mm,
I don't know if you get what I'm trying to mean with this, but especially with young kids, and I have this giving classes to third graders, uh,
mm,
that they were communicating with each other and with their teachers as they were giving prompts somehow.
mm,
I don't know if it's really connected with this situation because they were talking a lot about also this thing of getting connected, you know, in this the metaverse, yeah,
mm,
this virtual space that also generates avatars for everyone, and not associated with any trademark specifically, because there are many
mhm,
versions of this thing. It's not just for one company that decides to take over a common word, yeah, because there are a couple of those out there. But I mean, it's natural language to change and switch intentions during generations, right? But I wasn't aware maybe that we were to feel off too when that happens.
what do you mean feel off?
Uh, I mean, you've heard this alpha slang that is out there, right? That's make most of the conversations incomprehensible. Now imagine that is mostly in English, in Spanish. The
Okay.
English makes no sense. Imagine putting those English words in Spanish and try to use them randomly. So it's like they are generating their own barrier of communication on an intentional way.
Mhm.
So
And they probably are. That's probably the
yeah,
point.
yeah, yeah.
For those
I
who
was thinking
understand,
that
yeah.
because uh, the thing is, it's a movement, right? They're moving towards something. So what makes us want to follow others or be followed ourselves? What is that thing that is moving us towards this thing that's turning into a necessity somehow? And
Mhm,
since it's currency nowadays, it's like getting worse.
mhm. But the answer to both questions is the same. It's the need for community. Right? Well, we talked about this at some point. I think we were talking about loneliness. This idea that inside a spectrum, everybody has a level of social needs. Like everybody needs more or less social contact. Part of that social need is this need for belonging, the feeling that you are part of something else, feeling that what you are doing has meaning for somewhere or for something or for someone. That value is natural. I think in many ways, following or being followed sort of naturally emerges from that, right? Being followed takes energy. You are the decision maker. So not everybody wants to be the decision maker. So again, this sort of naturally falls into two camps. For people who, in that particular moment in time, have the energy to like be seen and make decisions. People who, in that particular moment of time, don't have the energy to be seen and make decisions. And we all sort of cycle between those positions in different contexts and in different moments of our life. Um, yeah, but I would say sort of following that idea of language changing. I would say that's just natural part of how a language works. I mean, new words emerge all the time, and old words stop being used all the time. I think in the same way we had a language that our parents didn't understand when we were young. Now younger people have language that is not clearly understandable for other people. I have heard this called kids lore. In the sense that it is lore that is created by kids in the playground, especially in their interaction with each other, and they exist only for those who are part of that group. If you are outside that, I say seven doesn't make sense. That's kind of the idea.
So we're getting old. Need to get used to it, basically.
In a way, but that was the thing that it's not a matter of age; it's a matter of context, right? If you started hanging out in a VTubers chat, you would probably start understanding what these terms mean. So it isn't really about age; it's about what you do or the context where you are. It just happens that if you are younger, you are by default in that context. But like if as a teacher you set yourself the goal of understanding all these words, you could. Like there's nothing really stopping you.
Yeah, well, as you say, context, maybe. Although, because if most of these communities might be populated by underage kids, and you're all of a sudden getting involved into that, there's a high risk for you.
Um,
Thinking grooming, maybe.
like like maybe I would see it in that sense. I mean, definitely like if you're adult, you shouldn't be in a minor community, but um, right. But I was thinking like specifically like as a teacher. Like, I was thinking like as a random adult going to a playground. Like I was thinking as a teacher, you can talk to your students and learn the language. Um, but I would say that's different from VTuber, for example. Like a lot of VTubers are explicitly 18 plus. Well, I would say those are different contexts that we're talking about here. Like
Yeah, but you
we're
know
talking
how
about kids lore.
regulations work.
No, but even like yes, but advertisers do not take that lightly. Like advertisers will get you in trouble if you say you are 18 plus and you're not, or the other way around. Like you know what I mean? Like yeah, regulation. Advertisers don't play around. Like if advertisers catch you saying shit over 18 when you say you are under 18, you're fucked. Like so no, like that's not realistic. Like and we can also look at the statistics. Like we can also look at the average age of like Twitch streamer or for Twitch bot watcher, for example. So no, like different things. Like there's definitely like this idea of language constantly changing, especially around kids or younger people. And there's definitely language that is, I would say, part of just online culture, maybe that sort of organized a little bit. Um, but these are sort of different, right? We're not talking about exactly the same. Sometimes they mix, but they are not exactly the same thing. Definitely, I would say the whole point of this more kid-related language, like I said, I read this being called kids lore. The point is that it is inaccessible as an adult, right? So as an adult, I may see Paw Patrol, the TV showing Discovery Kids, but I cannot participate of the game that the kids are playing on the playground. That is like a real limitation. You might be like, hey kids, let me play. They're just gonna laugh at me and do something else, right? Like so that's the difference. There is nothing preventing you from participating of a Twitch chat. That if you choose not to do it, that's a decision that you are doing yourself. But there is not a limitation by itself. Like the streamer is not going to kick you out. The community itself is unlikely to kick you out. Like that's kind of the idea there. Like it is a personal choice. Right? Like again, we say this all the time. Like humans are not passive receptors of the world. We choose the way we speak. You can choose to speak one way or another. Like you are not just a victim of your environment. Like you choose, and that's kind of the idea here as well.
Okay, so to dig a little bit on these parasocial relationships, right?
Mm.
And from what I've read, there are a lot of positive things about it, right?
Mhm.
Especially with this idea of the puppet therapy. I mean,
Of what? Sorry.
the puppet therapy. You know,
Okay.
the thing
Mhm.
that will help actually kid communicate. Yeah.
Mhm.
Uh, And apparently, according to numbers, there's a lot of neurodivergent people that is actually getting benefit from these kind of interactions. So
Mm,
there are another investigations out there that says, okay, let's put it more like on a balance and say, okay, there need to be boundaries, otherwise, uh, you'll get up into a very dark situation. So yes, there are good things, but those good things also could lead you to bad things and isolate you from reality and so whatever. We already said that. So you need to be somehow constantly checking on yourself. Yeah, we are sort of recommending to have like good mental health protocols for yourself and try to at least have some sort of therapy at some point. So communication helps you get it out. Uh, so if all of this is true, we got yes, it's good, but yes, it's also very very bad. Uh, what what will those boundaries be like? So how,
mm, mm,
who and also who is to set those boundaries? Because
mm, mm,
for adults it could be maybe easier, maybe, and that maybe is highly marked. But for a kid
mm,
that's just going out and maybe has no supervision on a digital media, any kind of it, a tablet, a cell phone, even a laptop, uh, how actually they're going to come up?
mm,
Because let's set on a kid of 8 who's already writing, right? Well, I expect he's writing. Uh, well, maybe he doesn't even need to write now because he can talk to the cell phone or the tablet and have the text down there, right? So it could be
mm,
even younger. Let's go to this situation. How these boundaries are to be set, and who is
mm,
responsible for setting those boundaries at the first place in this kind of relationship, this parasocial relationship.
mm. Okay. Okay. So let's split this question into two. Let's begin with kids, and then we'll go into adults. I don't know what that's for actually for adults, because if you're a kid, you shouldn't be watching this podcast. If it's a kid, obviously it's the guardian. Like whoever is the responsible adult is the one who sets the boundaries in relationship, or rather in confrontation, I say, with the kid. And these boundaries are probably going to be a lot more practical than anything else. So no watching Twitch after 9 p.m. Right? I would say those are very much more related to good parenting than to specifically VTubers for Twitch or anything like that. Like that boundary should be there regardless of what they are doing. Like no video games after 9 p.m. I mean, so now let's think about like the adults in the room. It's yourself. Like you are the one that sets those boundaries. The problem is we are not always in a situation where we can clearly see where those boundaries should be. So most people are capable of putting boundaries. Not everyone is always aware of where those boundaries should be. Right? So maybe I'm perfectly capable of saying, you know what, I probably shouldn't give this VTuber more than like a subscription a month, right? Like just so I can watch without that. But maybe I'm not realizing that this is a boundary I should have. And instead, I am giving money, giving money, giving money, hoping they will look at me, smile at me, say my name. Right? I don't have that boundary. There is no boundary. There is no limit to how much money in this case, in this example, I am willing to spend. So a lot of the work when it comes from boundaries comes from this very honest assessment of why am I doing this? And does it make sense to me to do this? If I have an amazing job, I have $2,000 of disposable income every month. sure, like give 200 to a VTuber. Why am I going to tell you what with your money? If you are $40,000 in credit card debt and you are giving $200 to a VTuber every month, yeah, that's a problem. You are hurting yourself by doing this. That's kind of the idea, right? So there needs to be a very personal assessment of where those boundaries should be to begin with, and what I expect to get from those boundaries. Like, why am I putting this boundary, right? Like, if I am saying, okay, I am only going to watch faithful Christian VTubers from now on, why am I setting that boundary, right? Maybe my kid is watching with me, right? And I want to have a better, like, a bit more, how do I say this politely? A bit less controversial content, let's say. Yeah. So, sure, that makes sense. So that's a good boundary to set. But from now on, it's only Christian content from me, right? Sure. But if I don't have any motivation to make that boundary, it doesn't matter how much I want to, it's not going to stick because there is no logic in my head that says, oh, yes, this is why we are doing this. So that's why kind of the idea is you start with an assessment with, is this causing me trouble? Yes. If so, how do I make a change? What change would I have to make to stop that? How would it look like if I didn't have this problem that I have right now? So that's kind of how boundaries are present. By yourself, like I said. It very much depends on what's healthy for you.
Okay, so after all this, and I think it's sensible to think on it as a consumer too. Uh, so I may not have actually developed a personal interest in VTubers, but I've definitely been following some YouTubers from a very long time. So
Mhm.
as we say, maybe same coin, different sides.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yep, yeah,
with their evident differences, but
yep.
you know, and there's also this term that maybe I've been following some of them even after or no before the term was even invented.
Mm.
To put
Mm.
it on how long it could be ago. Uh, but the thing is, I never really felt close to them. You know, like, and don't even really get the need to get in contact with them. Well, maybe excepting one specific situation that was with a Japanese teacher who was a YouTuber. So I do got in contact with him because I was like somehow thankful for how he was giving his lectures on YouTube.
Mhm.
So that was, but that was it. Like greetings and thank you email, and then that was basically it. No chatting, no nothing else. So uh, the thing is, how do we as consumers get more of the benefits and less of the drawbacks of this kind
Mm.
of connection?
Mhm.
Yeah, and
Mhm.
here comes the what recommendations, yeah, uh, are worth keeping in mind when actually choosing this kind of parasocial relationships. Because I mean, you're
Mhm.
not gonna go, oh no, this is the catalog, and I'll say this one and this one, this one. But maybe you will hit a point where you actually connect with it, with what someone is saying somewhere. So
Mhm.
you're choosing, but not. I don't think. I mean, maybe you're not completely aware of that. Yeah?
Mhm.
So what are those decisions I need to make in order to avoid ending up in a risky situation just by following someone, a VTuber, a YouTuber,
Mhm.
or whatever, and instead continue enjoying their content.
Mhm. Mhm. Yep, I think a lot of the things we said today kind of sort of fitting here very well, right? Like, you were talking earlier about boundaries. I would put that as the number one point. Like this idea of I said earlier, it doesn't matter what content it is you are looking at. You don't know the person behind the content, right? You don't know Joshua Wire. You don't know Santiago. You don't know the actual person. I think that having that idea in mind, like, is the first sort of basic level boundary, I would say. That doesn't mean that you don't have anything in common. No, like, a lot of the time, the people and things we like is because we find similarities or things that we would like to have. That's perfectly fine. But again, it's one thing to say, oh, this guy draws the way I like to draw, or this guy plays the games I like to play, or this crazy woman has the same opinion I have on life. That's one thing, right? The moment you will start going to there from, oh, and they understand me, oh, and they know what it's like to be me, that's where we start sort of blurring that boundary, right? Because they don't know you. You don't really know them, right? They may have share something with you, but they are separate. So that's, I think, sort of the first good point to start looking at, right? Like, maintaining that separation. You can be ride or die kind of fan, love the community, love the entertainer, love the VTuber, whatever. That is very separate from, oh, they understand me. Oh, they know what my struggles are. Oh, they have the solution for my problem. Those are very different things. Right? I would say one, that idea of sort of boundaries, sort of having a very clear distinction between who you are and who they are.
Oh, but wait a minute. And this comes just to my mind according to this, because there are YouTubers from those I could talk about that are actually encouraging people to believe they know them, like calling their public on, you know me because I've done this and that and whatever, right? So
Right.
giving this false expectancy of knowledge, or actually getting along or being familiar somehow, that is not there. And I mean, for people that is vulnerable, that could be a terrible way to trespass those boundaries, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. I would say that is manipulation. I would say that is, like you said, well, like that could be abusive for someone who is in a vulnerable position. But maybe a second, I think my alarm is making noise or something. Give me just 1 second here. Do you hear some magical birds filling in the abyss? Uh, okay, I mean, maybe the magical birds are not real. Um, I don't know, I think my alarm is. You don't hear this
Maybe there's something
in the
in the
background?
back. Yeah, yeah.
Let me see if
But
I
it's
can.
not like directly connected. So I
Okay,
don't know.
let's finish. Let's finish. I think we're near the end anyway. So, so yeah. So absolutely. So I would say that is manipulative, right? I would say that is the person you're following trying to take advantage of the position they are in, and definitely harmful for vulnerable people. I would say if you feel that somebody you follow is trying to manipulate you, you should consider following somebody else. Like that's
Try
kind
it
of,
out.
yeah, that's the same thing I would say. That I would say that's a boundary. Right? That's, it is absolutely true. There are bad influences in the world, and I wouldn't say they are universal. Somebody that may be a bad influence for me may not be a bad influence for you. So again, this is why there needs to be this important personal assessment, right? If I know I am an anxious person, I get depressed easily, maybe watching a war reporter in Ukraine, not the healthiest thing for me to watch, right? So again, there needs to be that assessment of, if this thing I'm watching, this VTuber I'm following, is my Yoshi actually healthy for me, or is this causing me trouble, or is this making things worse, right? But I think, I still put that into boundaries, right? There needs to be this limit of how far you're willing to go and how much you are willing to take. of somebody, right? If you're somebody making you feel uncomfortable, like don't stay there. Like that's there's a reason why you're not feeling comfortable. Maybe again, as I say very often, listen to your gut, listen to your instinct. If there's a reason, if something doesn't feel right, that may be a good sign to look into it. Maybe something isn't right.
Yeah, as the song said, listen to your heart.
Hmm?
So well, I think that's that's the main course for today. It's been it's been quite interesting, I must say, and also revealing somehow. There are stuff out there that could be good, and actually need to keep up on the boundaries. Being well wired up with yourself, try to notice when something could get dark, because apparently it
Yeah.
could be quite easy.
Yep, yep. And I think the same thing that can be very like helpful and very like community feeling and very like enriching, the same thing for the wrong person in the wrong situation can be very harmful, very toxic, very problematic. So there needs to be these, like I said before, this very personal assessment of is this enriching my life or is this causing me trouble?
So well, let's see what the internet has got to say about the VTubers and
Hmm?
this kind of situation. So we got some 5 questions out there, and I think most of them are well answered during this process. It's been long enough. So why do people feel emotionally close to VTubers?
Hmm. Um, we already talked about this, so I will give you a different answer from what I said earlier. I think an interesting way to think about it is in the sense that people, I mean, that we are really the speaker. So when you like somebody, what you like is the speaker, the person that speaks. Everything else is either translated by that or secondary to that. Videos in many ways are a good example of that. Of even disconnected from the physicality of a physical body. Charisma, talent, like passion, is enough to drive this connection, to drive a show, to drive entertainment, to establish these bond between uh, a communicator and an audience. And I think in many ways that's why people like VTubers, precisely because not everybody likes the physicality of the real world. And in many ways, any entertainer that helps you leave that to the side for a second, I think in many ways, can be very appealing, very entertaining. Um, Likewise, I think we talked at the beginning about the appeal of Japanese culture and the appeal of Japanese aesthetics from anime and stuff like that. I think that has a lot to do with it as well. I think that a lot of people just happen to like anime aesthetics either because they are discovering it now, because they discovered it some time ago, because it was part of their childhood or whatever. And in many ways, bringing it back in this more adult, more traditional way of like more like a radio show. I think in many ways also speaks to that as well, to a different form of something that maybe is nostalgic as well for other people.
Well, this one says, are parasocial relationships always unhealthy? Looks like a stain now. So
I would say I would say, I would say it's very easy for parasocial relationships to become problematic. That's how I would say it, right? Like, no, I wouldn't say they are necessarily problematic or necessarily unhealthy, but I think it's very easy for them to become problematic or unhealthy. Especially I think, like you said, there may be entertainers, there may be personalities that don't have a lot of care about those boundaries, don't have a lot of care about those or the more healthy ways of establishing that relationship. So I think it is very easy for them to become problematic. Um, Not always, but I think it is important. Like if you are feeling too connected to somebody that you have never once spoken to in a one-to-one setting, in general that can be problematic, right? Because at some point it will become evident that you don't know them, right? At some point they will say something that doesn't match your idea of who they are because that's not a real idea of who they are. And that will be only more hurtful for you on the long term, right? So that's kind of why, generally speaking, I mean, nothing wrong with it, but like don't go too deep into parasocial relationships. They can easily become problematic.
Sounds a lot like the line dividing platonic love and obsession too blurry there.
Yeah, exactly. Like if you push too much, the line begins to disappear.
Well, you're completely on the other side, so
Yes,
no,
yes,
be careful.
yes.
Um,
Yes.
why do neurodivergent people often enjoy VTuber content as viewers?
Because a lot of the social convention that can be difficult or that can be a challenge for some neurodivergent people are either made explicit or simplified in a VTuber show. If you think of facial expression, right? We were talking about earlier about the limits of animation. You may think of that as an advantage. If you only have a set limited number of facial expression that the character you're watching can make, it's easy to just learn what every expression means. Even if you don't naturally intuit the meaning,
Yeah.
it's easier to just be like, oh yeah, this should happen, right? I think that again because there is this element of the avatar or the puppet, there is a lot of more things that are put into words. So rather than just showing sadness, they may say, "Oh my gosh, I'm so angry today. Oh my gosh, I had such a bad day today," right? Because they know my face is not going to show it, so I have to say it. So I think there are a lot of these sort of kind of accidental accessibility changes that the VTuber or VTubing sort of brings to the table as part of what it is that makes it very accessible for a lot of people who may not feel the same around other types of content. I think that as well, the fact that there is this disconnect between the physicality of the entertainer and the VTuber character also means that there is a lot of people who normally would not have been able to become entertainers, would not have been able to become leaders of a community or like at the center of an audience, that because of this interface that exists, have been able to become entertainers from the community or whatever they are. And that is very inspiring for people who find themselves in a similar situation. So like I said at the beginning, if I think I'm the ugliest person ever, so I could never be famous or have a show, but I see a VTuber doing it, I'm like, oh, so it doesn't matter how ugly I am. Now I have been inspired. Now I have found something that's important to me that speaks to me. That kind of idea here.
Mm, yeah. So, can VTubers help reduce loneliness?
I would split that question into two again. I would say the act of watching a VTuber may make you feel less lonely. In the same way that having background music or background noise may make you feel less lonely than being in silence. But what will actually help diminish the feeling of loneliness permanently, what will actually make you less lonely, not just feel less lonely, but actually be less lonely, would be to be part of that VTubers community. So yes, but it's a bit more complicated than just watching a VTuber, right? The whole point, I'd say, of around VTubers is kind of the community as well. So I'd say they go hand in hand. So I'd say yes, but it does take a little bit of effort. You do have to be part of the community. You do have to put a little bit of energy into, like you would do with any other thing you like. to actually, find other people that like the same thing you like. That's kind of the idea. It's just easier if it's a VTuber because you all know you like it. Yeah.
So it's not them, but you. What you do, maybe
You, yeah.
using them as a tool, right? Somehow.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
a resource.
Exactly. And the same thing I said earlier. The same way we are not passive observers that just experience life in a negative way, we are also not just passive observers that observe life in a positive way. Like, if you do nothing, nothing will happen. So you do need to have a little bit of intention, right? You do need to get a little bit involved, as much as you feel comfortable, of course. Uh, but that's the point. And the community, the being there, even if it's just typing in chat, right? Like that human interaction is kind of what actually helps, not just the act of watching.
And this one, last one is, I think, the needed clarification if there wasn't enough so far. So, what are
Okay.
the risks of getting too attached?
All right. So the risk of getting too attached is that you are getting attached to an illusion, because the person, the thing that you are getting attached to is not real. Not because VTubers aren't real, but because your image of who this VTuber is not real. Because you don't actually know. You are watching a show, you are watching an entertainer, you are watching like an act, a performance. And that is for not what you are establishing a relationship with. So that is unhealthy because that is not real. And sooner or later, you will sort of be faced with that reality when they do something that doesn't fit your model of who they are. And that will be more harmful for you in the long term. So that's the part that's sort of unhealthy. We're not a boundary between remember that this is an entertainer putting up a show, and you as a person default. And you start thinking, oh, I know this person. Oh, this person knows me. That is a problem. That's when it becomes toxic, let's say. Like we have said before, like it's more about the way in which something is used than the thing itself. The same thing, a little bit can be healthy, a lot can be problematic. A little bit of, feeling like, okay, this VTuber starts being great. Enjoy the show, enjoy that. When my emotional state starts depending on this VTuber saying hi to me when I send a message in chat, that becomes problematic. I don't know if this makes sense.
Yes. So, thank you, Josh, for the clarifications here. I think they were fairly needed. Well, there's a lot to think about this afternoon, and I think this got just yet a tail to be cut. I mean, there's a long way through this yet to come. We'll be seeing a lot of things that will evolve as a result of the exposure to this kind of things. So only time will tell. I mean, we may get an idea, but and as always, in each week, we'd like to thank you all for your presence. We'd love to hear from you on the other side. Uh, we're still working on some issues, some changes. In time, it will be more visible. Maybe next year. Maybe next year. It's taking a little longer, but you'll see. It will come. Also, we're trying to adapt some more fitting formats for this show. So we'll keep on evolving as best we can. So Josh,
Thank you
anything
very
else
much
to say?
for, yeah, as always, thank you very much for being here. I hope you have a good time. As always, please don't forget to give us a follow here on YouTube, on Twitch. We're here every Wednesday, 11 a.m. Calgary time. You can find the other time down below. And as always, thank you. Thank you for everything. Thank you for being here. Thank you, Santi, as well.
And well, as virtual connections become part of everyday life, the changes is not the rejection of these parasocial relationships, but actually to understand them. Uh, use your conscience, try to keep yourself connected to reality, and help the creators design better communities for everyone. And don't get too attached. I think you'll be good. Don't replace virtuality with real humans. That will help you grow. So until next time,
Like always, thank you for being here, and we'll see you next session.
peace out.
Thank you,
Bye.
peace.